Okay, we're not ready to begin yet.
Good morning, and thank you all for coming. I'm LJohnson, and my project was successful teamwork with robotics. My research question was, what qualities are essential for successful teamwork? And to investigate this, I decided to work with the Nelson County Middle School First LEGO League. And I had prior experience working with them. The past year, I was brought on as what I like to call a LEGO consultant, which I was basically there to help just show some building tricks on how to create a better robot, and work just a little bit with the programming. I wasn't brought on very early. I was brought on very late into it, and I wasn't a big part of the team. But something I saw that could use improvement was how well the team worked together, how much teamwork they showed. And I thought I could possibly enhance that using some methods that I've learned from past teachers, and I also experimented with other ideas that didn't actually make it in. Experimented with the idea of gamification, which is the idea of using games to teach skills. And there's a lot of teamwork building ones out there. But what I ultimately went with was CCC Camp outside of Charlottesville. And what CCC Camp is it's a ropes challenge course and summer camp. But what I was focusing on was the ropes challenge course. And what it was used for was to help build teamwork and camaraderie amongst the students taking part in the league. The idea was to have them face challenges together and learn to rely on each other. And hopefully that would bond them before the season even began. So once they did begin building the robot, programming it, etc., they'd be better at doing it together. For this project, my mentor was Mr. Owen Onderdonk, who is the technology teacher at Nelson Middle School. And he was both my internship mentor and my community service mentor. And that's because this, the LEGO League project was overall a very large thing that was composed of a lot of different parts, which really made up both the community service aspect and an internship. Now, as I mentioned, CCC Camp had a ropes challenge course, but the biggest part of that challenge course was what they like to call the teeter-totter. And what the teeter-totter is it's a seesaw, as you can see, but it's brought out a lot farther than your standard seesaw. It's fairly low to the ground. And the goal is very simple. It's just to get all of those students onto the teeter-totter without tipping it left or right. In perfect balance. It can't touch the ground. And in the beginning, they all tried to rush onto it. They all just tried going on as fast as they could. Hopefully it wouldn't tip it if they just rushed. As one might imagine. They tried for quite a while doing that. But what they learned, especially with help from the person running CCC, who came with us and led us on the whole challenge course, was that they needed to stand back and share ideas with each other and work together to come up with a solution on how they could do this. And because of the nature of this, they had to each have a part. They each had to have a role. In this case, where they wanted to stand. Later on, it was other things. And once they stood back and they made a plan, they were able to execute it almost flawlessly, yet it was only a few tries. And they carried that mentality on into the whole season. And to understand LEGO League, you first need to know three things. There's the biggest, most well-known part of it, the robotics challenge. That's where they build a robot, program it, and they have it do a series of challenges across a board. And they have to go get objects and do various things. But that's not the biggest part of LEGO League. The second biggest part of LEGO League is actually a research project, much like what we had to do later. But their research project was matching this year's theme, which was the future of education. And they did a fantastic research project in which they created an educational app. But the biggest part of LEGO League is actually the core values. The core values are a series of tenets about LEGO League. And the number one important value on that list is we are a team. Before each and every meeting, Mr. Onderdonk had the whole team recite the core values. So every day you come in saying, we are a team. And they stuck with that mentality, and that's why they were able to succeed so well at state, at the regional level competition. They won first place at regionals and went on to states because they were such a good team. They knew how to work together. And this is where the stuff they learned at the ropes challenge course, especially the teeter-totter, really shine. At the core values evaluation competition, they were given an abstract concept, which was to show a desk with only themselves and nothing else. And much like with the teeter-totter, they went in laughing and they just kind of started trying to make a desk. But then they realized they knew how to do this better. They stood back and they used those teamwork values they had learned to make a plan and execute it flawlessly. They went, they created a desk, turning into the shape of a desk, and the judges loved it. And everyone had a role, which was the biggest part of the teamwork of LEGO League. And they also showed this on the challenge board. This is the challenge board. And throughout the whole challenge, everyone had a role when they were building the robot, when they were programming the robot, when they were doing the project. Whatever it was, they had a specialized role. But at the same time, everyone worked together on the team and shared ideas. And everyone knew each other's work. So when they had to improvise, when a robot went that way instead of that way, they knew about the programmer's job and what they had done. So they knew how to use that program to do it differently. If they had to make a repair, everyone knew how the robot was built because everyone was part of every part of the team. And they were able to do so well because everyone knew each other's stuff and was part of a whole team. And that leads me into the 3 most important values of teamwork I found in my research. My research was on what makes successful teamwork. And what I found made successful teamwork was number 1, interdependence. That's not independence, it's interdependence. As I said, being part of each other's work. It's very important. The second part was boundaries, knowing when to work with someone as a good thing or whether it's a hindrance. So we had people who, as specialists, were building the robot and wanted to work alone. We had a lot of people at the beginning of the season who wanted to work alone before they had gone through LEGO League. And they finally realized that they needed to have other people come in and critique their work and find better ways to do certain parts that they might not have seen. So being an interdependent team member was really a big part of an effective team. And then finally, I had a really interesting way to see what may actually be the most critical part of a team, which is the stability of membership. Stability of membership is just the idea that everyone shows up, everyone gives it their all every day, everyone is part of the team and makes sure they're always there. And we had to actually break the LEGO League into 2 separate teams because we had so many students at the beginning. We had around 15 students, and we broke into teams of 8 and 7. And what occurred was one team, which is the one that made it to states, excelled because they always showed up. They were always there for each other. They always knew how to work well with each other. But the other team fractured for various reasons. Certain ones just couldn't show up or they didn't get along well. And because they didn't have that stable membership, with some dropping out and some coming back in, they weren't able to succeed. Not because they didn't work as hard, as the people who were in it worked just as hard as the other team. But without the stability of membership that is so critical to teamwork, they couldn't do nearly as good of a job in competition. And that brings me to my legacy. Whether or not CCC, the trip, becomes a part of LEGO League each year may or may not occur. But there's one much, much more important thing I'll leave behind from working with LEGO League this year. When I surveyed each and every one of the students at the end of this year, I asked them a question: did you make a friend? And almost every single one of them said yes. Does anyone have any questions?
What do you plan to do in the future?
Well, glad you asked. In the future, I will be attending the University of Richmond, and I'm currently thinking I want to major in cognitive science. which actually does incorporate a lot of the stuff I dealt with in LEGO League. Namely, there is the computer science aspect of cognitive science. It includes a very heavy emphasis on both neuroscience and computer programming, but also the psychology aspect of it, because teamwork really is kind of rooted in the psychology of how it works, and I'd like to explore that some more if I can.
Lawson, obviously, over the years in Blue Ridge, you've taken part in a lot of team-based project learning. Any advice for us as a partner about things that we might do that can help facilitate development of teams?
Question. Actually, I came across in my research some interesting stuff on actually being able to evaluate teamwork with, I say rubrics. It's kind of, it's not task-based. It's actually based on how skilled someone can be at teamwork itself. And I'm kind of curious if maybe you could, like going in, see how a student, performs teamwork their first year in governor school, because I remember I really struggled with it. Part of the reason I chose this is I was not a team player when I first came in, especially Presley might remember. But possibly maybe seeing how they do on that evaluation afterwards, see how well the program emphasizes teamwork and changes them.
That's a great spot. I'll be in contact.
In the back, Perry.
I've been over in the middle school working with the academic career plans for the middle schoolers, and I'm hearing about this LEGO League. There's a lot of kids really excited about it. Can you tell me when that group was formed and whether or not the group has grown in numbers since you've been in project?
Actually, I'm trying to think when our LEGO League started, because LEGO started the Mindstorms project back in the late 90s, and I know the league's, I think the league's earliest year is 1998, possibly. I'm not quite sure when Nelson's was founded, though, because I know we have some of the original robotics kits from back then, so I'd imagine it's been going for quite a while. But in the last year, we had a lot more people signing up. I mean, we seriously had 15 to 20 people initially signing up. But as I said, by the end, we dropped significantly.
Why do you think that?
A lot of people, I did survey afterward, and I found a lot of people had other commitments. That was a really big problem, was keeping your grades up, because people didn't want to lose, their academics to do this, even though as fun as it was. We really did demand we demanded a high level of commitment this year. We really did. We were pretty strict about you needed to keep coming to meetings you couldn't miss unless you really had a reason. And if Mr. Underdog in the audience there might say, did we do 4 days a week by the end? 3, yeah, I think it's a good idea. But yeah, we had them coming almost every day of the week, which was a lot of commitment.
And I had a question, and it was earlier in your presentation, and I wanted to know if everyone had worked well together, and you answered that. And the answer to that was initially no.
Initially, no, but by the end, the ones who stuck around could work together, and
But
that's
that was a rearranged.
it was, yeah.
How were the teams chosen to begin with?
I worked with Mr. Onderdonk on that, actually. We considered some different ideas in the beginning. We kind of tried to figure out what students really excelled at we kind of just had them work with Mindstorms, and we had the CCC experience. So we tried to get at least one person who was really good at leadership on each team. We tried to split it up so they have people they could go to as specialists. But by the end, the team that didn't do as well was down to 3 people. And those weren't all people we had in the beginning. I think 1 or 2 of them came in later. And that's part of the reason they just weren't able to work as well, as they just had less people and they weren't as balanced, really.
Just as you were speaking, it sounds so much like Destination Imagination.
It is a lot like the
Teamwork, the goal of the competition, the theme, it sounds so much like
Kind of coming full circle, aren't I?
You said that you had a way of tracking how people on each team performed and how much.
Oh yeah. When we
Would
go
you
to
elaborate on that?
when we go to competition, we have judges evaluating each portion, and there's a rating scale as to how the team overall does. And because we had the two teams, we were able to look at those and see how each team did. And also just from observing how they worked with others during all the time we spent leading up, we were kind of able to figure out how people were performing in different areas. It's a pretty in-depth rubric actually that they have.
Yeah, and you peer reviewed.
Well, basically they hand it off to us after competition, and we're just able to read through and figure out exactly what they did and any comments they've made. And we took into consideration those when the team went to state level, because we had the regional level one we could look at.
When you followed up with the participants at the end, those who initially weren't great with teamwork,
Yeah.
was there any realization that this is something, whether they've seen the change within themselves, willing to work, or that they saw the productivity increase?
I think what they might have seen is the productivity increase, because we had one, and also a lot of it, the same, working together as a team is really based on liking your teammates and, you know, having a friend is liking someone. And we had teammates who became good friends over it from working together and producing a better product than they would have initially. Specifically, one of the people we had identified as a really good builder worked with one of the people we had identified as a really good programmer. And by the end of the whole program, because they worked in tandem, they not only become friends, but they put out a way better product than either of them could have.
And they realized that.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
And they're still hanging out in middle school today.
Start with, were two teams going to compete? They were going to go in, or just one team?
The original, I believe the very first thought was one team, which has been the standard.
So and so I was just wondering if you kind of tried to have one strong team, one weak team to start with, and then if you allowed any of those to transfer when you realized that you could only send one team.
Oh,
That might have affected.
We did send both teams to
Or you
regional.
sent both,
We sent both to regional,
they
yes.
both got.
They both competed, yeah. They competed against each other. Well,
Okay.
not directly, but indirectly were against each other.
But
that
by
way.
then, only one of them had to be three.
Yeah, one of them was, I was gonna say there, but we initially had basically even teams. I mean, one was one shorter, but we had 15 people, which the team limit is actually 8 people per team.
But since you were trying to study teamwork, you wanted to keep it that way.
Yeah,
You wanted to have it smooth that.
Yeah, we had set teams that stayed. That's why we didn't just like move over people and make the teams just go, 7 and 3 became, 5. I can't.
But that camp experience really made a difference.
Yeah, I think the camp experience really.
I went on the trip, it's interesting.
The teamwork success was better because you organized the kids, or because do you feel like it worked better if you'd organize them, or if they had just picked their own teams? Did you guys pick the teams?
I think, yeah, we picked the teams. I was actually a bit nervous about that at first. Mr. Honorup was wanted to pick teams though. And I think picking the teams ultimately was better because we did in fact pair some people we knew actually, didn't get along, but we didn't just pick friend groups and put them on. We picked people because of what we saw they excelled at, not because they were friends with so and so. And I don't think they would have picked the same teams at all, in fact. Are there any more questions? Thank you.